Well, thank you for joining us. This is Maureen Wilson, who is joining Women Patriots, and you can see a little about her and NCFIRE, which is North Carolinians for Immigration Reform and Enforcement. On womenpatriotshow.com, you can see some information that was put on there about NCFIRE, and Maureen Wilson is the state director in North Carolina for NCFIRE. And she has worked extensively on illegal immigration in North Carolina. That is her beeline. That is her, what she eats, sleeps, and breathes. And she knows about all the legislation that's going on in North Carolina in particular. And she also has some great knowledge on the national level when it comes to illegal immigration. She's familiar with all the legislation, the different politicians and what they're doing. She's right on top of them if they are saying one thing, if they're talking out one side of their mouth and they're voting another way or they're putting another bill through. She is right on top of that and will take no prisoners with that. And Maureen also helped. We were on a team together and we created this conference called II Impact back in August of 2011, and that was the impact of illegal immigration on the state of North Carolina, and Maureen was integral in helping us create that conference and follow through with it. And we also we hosted Dennis Michael Lynch, the documentarian, for that conference, and we did a showing of They Come to America. And that, I don't think we mentioned it before, but I just want to mention it to our listeners right now that his documentaries, They Come to America and They Come to America 2, are available on his website. That's theycometoamerica.com.
And we have a giveaway for those tonight, too.
Oh, yeah. Why don't you tell us about that? If somebody calls in, gives us a good question, you will get a DVD of They Come to America. Do you have the first one or the second one or both?
I have both.
Excellent. So without further ado, hi, Maureen.
How are you this evening, Jude?
Awesome. So tell us a bit about your background and how you got started with NCFIRE.
Okay. Well, NCFIRE started getting off the ground in the summer of 2007, and officially we became a 501c3 nonprofit in 2008. A small group of us attended a national, what we called a statewide national security conference up in Raleigh to discuss immigration. Judges, town officials, and concerned citizens got together to see what we could do. So after that particular meeting and some speakers flew in from various parts of the country, we started thinking we needed to form some sort of group. We knew that there were two, but they were working more on the national level. So James Johnson and myself, he lives over in the Fayetteville area, decided that we would create North Carolinians for Immigration Reform and Enforcement. Little did we realize that we'd still be going strong this many years later. That's how naive we were. We thought if we worked hard and put enough effort in, we could get the job done. And we've now learned that it's so much harder than that. And there's so many nuances and the politics involved. And we realized initially we just didn't have a clue what we were even attempting to do. So here we are. We have about 5,000 members, most of whom live in North Carolina, and we work on legislation primarily in North Carolina. We send it up to some of our Washington attorneys so that we can get a handle on whether or not it's legal, and we get assessments done on it. We try to lobby in Washington. We speak when we're invited to. We make at least one annual trip to the border, and we also, we keep a website up and running, and our focus is a series of crime reports. We look at sanctuary cities in North Carolina, document fraud, this epidemic of sex crimes against children, Hispanic against Hispanic crime, which is being swept under the carpet. It's immense, mostly executions, bullet to the head. Can't get anyone to talk about that. And we also have our North Carolina victims of illegal aliens, and those are citizens who have been murdered by illegals in our state. So we're quite busy on many fronts.
Excellent. And tell us a little about this Sunday, the 3rd, was the National Day of Remembrance for those who have been killed, Americans who have been killed by illegal immigrants. Can you tell us a little more about that?
Yes. This was the 3rd National Day of Remembrance for, as you just stated, for victims of illegal aliens. It originated 2 years ago, and the date was specifically chosen as it was the 25th anniversary of the 1986 IRCA, Immigration Reform and Control Act, and a FAIR, which is Federation for Immigration Reform, and a former Pennsylvania state representative thought that that would be an appropriate date, because here we were 25 years later, and the state of immigration in the United States has not, in fact, gotten better, which was predicted 25 years ago. It's actually gotten worse. So that date was deliberately chosen. It typically falls around the first Sunday of each November, and there are a series of activities and candlelight vigils and remembrances held in various cities throughout the country. This year the large ones were Los Angeles, Phoenix, Arizona, and there was another one down in the Miami area, where in some cases family members come to pay homage to family members that have been murdered. Photos of victims are shown, interviews are done, prayers, just remembrance, but not only is it to remember the victims, it's really to impact legislative change, and that's the hard part, is drawing legislators' attention to the issue of how many Americans have actually died on U.S. soil by people that shouldn't have been here to begin with. Most are vehicular homicides, driving under the influence, and then, with the component of hit and run. However, there are a lot of horrendous murders of U.S. citizens that are just appalling. And Jude, you yourself just wrote this wonderful article on such a sad subject in North Carolina of military members who have served their country honorably and then have died at the hands of an illegal alien here at home in North Carolina. And I just find that appalling. And I'm so appreciative that you took the time to write that, and hopefully people will actually read that article and start to consider what open borders mean and how that impacts military also. Right.
The article that Maureen is referring to is on my website, politicalanimalblog.com, and the way I introduce that is to point out that, these veterans, and I'm also a veteran, and I feel very strongly about this, we signed that blank check, good for up to our lives, good for a value of up to and including our very lives, to protect and defend against enemies, foreign and domestic, to protect our Constitution, to defend the Constitution, to defend the American people and our borders. These people, we made a promise, and we fulfilled that promise, and we have served honorably, and yet, because our government will not simply enforce the laws, we can deal with immigration reform, but if they would simply enforce our laws, if they would simply enforce our borders, that would go a long way. It would go 75% of the way we need to go to secure the American people, to protect the American people against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I introduced that article with mentioning another article from the Examiner. More than 100 North Carolinians have been killed by illegal aliens. And there's another article that I referenced, not for the faint of heart, illegal immigrants are raping their way through North Carolina's children, okay? Not adults, not people who, have the wherewithal to defend themselves, but children. This is not victimless. These are not just people, they want to tell you that these people just want a better life. I challenge that 100%. Really? Do they? How do you know? You didn't ask every single one of them. When you go through the legal immigration policy or process, like my husband did, who's from Brazil, he had a background check. He had to prove what he did for a living. He had to prove he had no communicable diseases. He had to prove he wasn't a criminal. He had to prove why he had to state in writing why he was in this country. So when you do the legal immigration process, you do know what motivations these immigrants have for being here. They have to put it in writing. They are asked directly, why are you here? No guessing, no assuming, oh, you're just here for a better life, aren't you? Well, what are these criminals' idea of a better life? Raping children, driving drunk, and they're given licenses. They used to be given licenses by the government of North Carolina. Can you, Maureen, talk about a little bit more about that and where we are? I know we'll go from a little bit about North Carolina and where we are, and then maybe we can talk a little more broadly about the nation and where we are with illegal immigration and this whole amnesty push coming up yet again.
Sure. In my estimation, we haven't made much progress, at least since we got involved in 2008, as far as enforcing immigration laws in North Carolina. It's been a slow go, and we actually suffered a reversal this congressional session. What we have wanted, in addition to the most basic enforcement, which is the border and the laws, we wanted E-Verify put in place, which is a federal system that allows for an employer to check all job hires, their Social Security number against a driver's license and other documentation that's presented to, number one, see who they claim to be, and number two, are they eligible to work in the United States? And we've consistently, especially since this president has been in office, have run an extremely high unemployment rate in North Carolina, almost for 6 years now. And we know there are jobs out there because we have a few 100,000 illegal aliens who hold a lot of these blue-collar jobs. And so one of the things, again, we wanted is to preserve jobs for our legal residents. And we got some measures of E-Verify in place, and it was a major, major uphill battle. It took many trips to Raleigh. It took huge citizen outreach and huge groups of citizens just on their own calling, writing an email, and emailing and pressuring representatives and asking for job protection. Now that, in this past session, was watered back down again in a way that is also dangerous when we talk about rape and homicide and drug cartel activity. We just opened a loophole that we had closed, and specifically that happened due to the House Speaker in North Carolina, Tom Tillis, who sent his agriculture legal counsel into these immigration enforcement meetings with bill representatives, and we couldn't figure out why this ag attorney was in there. And it became apparent as time went by that agricultural, hospitality, and Chamber of Commerce interests were also being protected. And what happened this past session, when that loophole opened, it opened for seasonal labor, which previously those employers of seasonal labor had been also held to using E-Verify. And when we mean seasonal labor, it was not just confined to agricultural employees. That's for those of us that live on the coastal area, that's your summer seasonal labor jobs for companies that employ less than 25 people. That's your landscaping jobs, your golf course jobs. That's your college kids that are taking a job in a restaurant, a fast food, a hotel, a motel. those jobs now, there's no E-Verify checks that need to be made for 9 months. And seasonal labor, which customarily had been just 3 months, expanded to 9 months. Well, that now means that all of these various employers, because they're exempt from using E-Verify and checking to see whether or not they have a legal hire, no longer have to hire U.S. citizens, no longer have to hire North Carolinians. So that's been a huge setback. And the enforcement bill, we finally had this great enforcement bill, and we were just enthused. It was backing up law enforcement. There was every last tooth in it that we wanted to protect North Carolinians and protect, really all residents that are here. That was tabled. We'll probably see some version of that in the short session again. And we also were fighting an uphill battle, and this came from Tea Party, Republican, elected officials in North Carolina, representatives that wanted to license illegal aliens. And that now is undergoing another study, and that, the argument we made is that will be a disaster. That's a huge magnet. You put a job and a license in an illegal alien's hands, and it spreads like wildfire to come to North Carolina. It does not deter illegal immigration. So, again, we haven't made much progress, and we actually fell back in a couple of areas, and that is coming from what I call rhino Republicans, the big business Republicans that are looking out for ag, chamber, hotel, motel, and they're not looking out for the safety or the jobs of the citizens.
Yeah, and that's something I know that I really want to highlight just by, in the writing, and I know that this is going to be a big issue as the primaries continue to gear up here in North Carolina. We've got Greg Brannon, who, my vote's with Greg Brannon. I'm not afraid to say it. He is a really, really strong constitutional conservative. And when it's coming against Tom Tillis, and there's so many reasons to oppose Tom, but, this is really, it's against the citizens. It's shirking their duty to protect the citizens of North Carolina. It screws over veterans. It screws over minorities. It screws over African Americans.
Right.
In terms of those jobs, those are all jobs that people, men and women returning from war, should be getting those jobs. And like you said, the college kids, it's such a line of BS about whatever job it is something that Americans won't do. They're all jobs that Americans will do. Whether it's picking tomatoes, whether it's changing beds in a hotel, whether it's doing landscaping. I did landscaping when I was.
I've done all those jobs, maid work, fast food. We do those jobs until we get an education or we learn a trade. We've always been willing to do those jobs. I mean, that's garbage when I hear politicians say that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I have a question about the immigration here in North Carolina. Somebody that I know, his wife went to get her naturalization papers, and we were talking, and he had told me that she was really studying the Constitution, and I told them to go to Hillsdale online to learn more about the Constitution and all. Well, I saw him the other day, and he said his wife had gone to get her papers. I said, good, how did it go? Well, they supposedly have to go through testing when they're trying to get legal.
Yeah.
And you had to write something. Well, he just gave her a sentence to write, and she wrote it, and he was asking her questions, and then he cut it off and said, well, you know what you're talking about. I don't have to ask you anymore.
Well, what they do, the immigration process, because my husband went through this, and you can go online and you can find the tests that they give. They have 100 questions, but they don't ask you any more than 10 of them. So if you get 6 out of 10 right, then they don't ask you any further questions because you've essentially passed the test. They will ask you any one of 100 questions, and if you get 60 or 70% of them right, actually I think it might be you have to get 10 questions right, then they don't ask you any further. So I can't imagine, though, that she was able to pass it.
They had to write why they were in there, right? Why they wanted to be in the United States?
This depends on what stage she's at. I mean, she didn't just go and one day take the citizenship test. There's a ton of paperwork you have to do to apply for citizenship. You have to have somebody sponsoring you, or you can either have a job sponsoring you, or if you're married to a citizen, then there's a separate procedure for applying for citizenship where you're married to a citizen, which is what my husband did. But you have to go through a series of paperwork, a series of applications. They do a background. The FBI does a background check on you. They do medical testing of you because they have to make sure that you're not carrying any communicable diseases, bringing them into the country. You have to be able to communicate in English. You have to be able to write in English. You have to be able to pass that test. But passing that test is like the very last step after a month-long process, if not years-long process, depending on your situation. So she didn't just walk in, take a test, and get her papers.
So, and we need to know, because going on in Washington, D.C., people may want to know why we're actually talking about this, but right now they are debating in the House about giving amnesty.
Right.
And they're not securing our borders.
And they're allowing illegal people, in our White House while they keep our kids out.
Yeah. And they're in the education system, and they're taking up classroom spots that American citizens then are pushed out of. I mean, this is not a victimless crime here. And they want to say that, these are just people who want a better life. And for many of them, that may be true. But let me also say this, which I point out in my article as well. Enforcing the laws benefits all people, illegal aliens, legal citizens, legal immigrants. They benefit and protect everybody. If we are enforcing the law, we are protecting those actually good illegal immigrants who are genuinely here to get a better life or to escape some sort of hardship or persecution or whatever drug cartels in Mexico. If they are genuinely here for that reason, it will benefit them if America is enforcing the laws. They will be protected from these illegal immigrants who are raping their way across North Carolina. They will be protected from these illegal immigrants. Everybody is protected. We should not be giving them driver's license.
It's also in our Constitution of the United States to keep the border secure, and it just, they're not doing anything.
It's basic, absolutely. It's totally basic. It's one of our first things that the government is for. That's one of the only things that the government originally, our tax dollars were actually only to go toward our military and the public defense.
Yes. Now
is a whole different story.
Yeah,
absolutely. Let me give a quick update to anybody listening out there. We got 82% reporting. 47.2% for Ken Cuccinelli, 46% for Terry McAuliffe, 6.9% for Robert Sarvis, who is, we found out, funded by an Obama bundler today in the Virginia governor's race. So that's a quick update. We also want to say give us a call. If you call us at 347-237-5087 if you have a question for Maureen, or if, because we have some DVDs to give away of They Come to America. So give us a call. And with that, we'll go back to Maureen.
Yes, and if, you know what we'll do? The first caller we'll give the DVDs to.
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah.
So, Maureen, what can we do? I assume that you're up to date too on the national level. What can we do to make our senators and people listen to us?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And right. And what's been happening on the federal level, it's difficult because there's so many bills that are filed. When you think that you can trust somebody, you've trusted a representative or a senator for a while, suddenly you find that they're switching positions. So it's been very difficult for us to really get a handle on the direction that this possible amnesty might go. But if you're listening and if you'd like to do something, if you call your senator or representative in Washington, try to ask for the immigration aid. It's sometimes difficult to get through, but talking to the college student who mans the phones, other than if they're just marking a yay or a nay on a piece of paper, you're really wasting your time. They've got a stack of calls coming in, and you're explaining with great passion why you are holding a particular position, but you're wasting that usually on the intern who's on the other end. So you want to ask for the actual aid. Numbers USA is a great site, and again, that's numbersusa.com. Free faxes, pre-written. You can change some of the text, and those are sent out by the thousands. Those are sent from the Washington-based numbers into the senators and representatives' offices, and they're tailored for the particular state that you live in. So that's a great resource. Calling the home office, the home offices, pros and cons on that. Usually going with a small group of people or joining a larger event. I mean, numbers speak volumes, and I have to say when it comes to immigration enforcement, we have a hard time driving the numbers. We have found now that the Tea Party Patriots and I think Tea Party Nation have taken up the issue of immigration, so we have found a larger venue in which to attach this particular issue, and we've gotten some great traction. But again, if you call for an immigration event, unless it's something really heated and you have a lot of passionate people about it, you won't get the showing. So it'd be better to go in teams and lobby. But it's a tough call. We've tried everything. Sometimes something works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes public humiliation of a representative calling them out. It's been we've used such a variety of tactics, and again, it just depends on the issue. It depends on your representative, and it depends, are they up for re-election? There's just so many variables involved.
Well, we know here in North Carolina, our representatives don't do a darn thing.
What district are you in? Can I ask what
I'm in District 4 with David Price. And
I was okay.
Yeah, I was just going to get the email. He sent me an email. He's just so for the morons that are up in office. And I had gone one time to one of his town hall meetings, and he just sat there and lied. As I'm sitting in my seat going, he's lying. People are looking at me like, he's lying about giving money. We're still giving money to Israel. I'm like, no, giving money to our enemies.
You said it.
And he would not fess up to that. He's like, no, not really, because people were asking him these questions. And he just doesn't, he's not truthful.
You have to call them out. I'm sorry, go ahead. I interrupted you.
Yeah, I do call him out. I must have deleted the email because I was so aggravated with it. But, it's like, oh, thank you for contacting me about this, blah, blah, blah. But according to the Constitution, this happened and that happened. You know what? According to the Constitution, you're not doing your job, And
you call them out on their voting record. That's the best way to nail them, is on the voting record. And if it's an immigration issue, which there's a lot of equally important issues. Immigration, there's a report card on each representative for our U.S. representatives on this site, and they'll grade, for North Carolina, they've graded Richard Burr and Kay Hagan on A, B, C, D on how they vote on immigration issues, and that's really handy to print something like that off. It's hard for them to wiggle around how they voted on an issue.
Was that Numbers USA, Maureen?
Yes, that's where the report cards are.
Cool. Thank you.
Very handy. Yeah, that's just one tool.
Excellent.
Wow.
Awesome. So let's talk about, I don't know. We've heard it's in the atmosphere that Obama is bringing back the amnesty debate to sort of divert from the Obamacare foobar, the Obamacare catastrophe. What do you think? Do you have a prediction on what is going to happen in the next few months?
I don't have a prediction, but I do know this. The vote will lie in the House, and it means that from now until we are through this particular session, our intent is to work. I don't want to say to work as though we're going to lose, but we better not take anything granted, and we need to just go full steam ahead with whatever strategies our small groups have in place to persuade our representatives to vote in the manner that we would like them to do so. And many times we can leverage with crime, we can leverage with victims, we can leverage with just the sheer number of constituents that feel a certain way. So we're going to send if you want to say, a war party up there around the 20th to specifically lobby and put pressure on North Carolina representatives, and we'll put more information out about that because there's room for other people to come and join this group. So we're probably going to have a conference room in one of the hotels, and we're laying out how we want to do this and reaching out to conservative media. We're not going to give up. We don't think we've won, nor do we think we've lost. We just know we need to work hard for the next couple of months.
And what's a website for that?
For which?
For your...
what you were just talking about, getting a room there and going over everything?
Okay, that will be posted on the ALIPAC website, www.alipac, and I think he's .org.
Okay, thank you.
And I think the press release went out on that today. But there'll be more details forthcoming on that.
Okay.
And on their website, you can sign up to get their emails, and same with the Maureen's NCFIRE. The website there is NCFIRE.info.
Yes, that's right.
So you can get information there, and then there's the numbersusa.com. So there's a lot of information out there, and thank you very much for for all that motivation on what we need to do. Between Obamacare and amnesty, I think there are really no more important issues that really our life depends on it. Our lives totally depend on these issues. We're going to be the victims of government tyranny. We already are with this administration, but what really puts us into slavery is Obamacare. And what really puts us over the edge in terms of lawlessness in our country is both that and illegal immigration. Because where there is no law enforcement, there really is no law, and people are left to fend for themselves. And between Obamacare, legal immigration, and gun control, the law-abiding citizen is screwed.
Right.
And our rights are being taken away by tyrannical fiat practically every single day, it seems like. And so appreciate some of those specific points on what we can do and more information on how we can hold our representatives accountable, where we can get their record. Maureen was referring to the report card on numbersusa.com. Well, thank you so much, Maureen, for taking your time and talking with us and talking so in depth. You're just a wealth of knowledge. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Jude. You've made some excellent points, and I've absolutely enjoyed listening to some of the points that you've brought forward. It's a big issue, and there's a lot of room for a lot of people to weigh in, a lot of work to be done.
Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Maureen, for joining us and being information for our listeners out there, because that's what we've got to do. We've got to get informed.
Thank you for your radio blog. I was just delighted to hear that you formed and that Jude's now become part of this radio blog. This will be excellent going forward. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.